The plants needed water at exactly 3:47. I found the house sitting listing on a Tuesday afternoon when my bank account had $17 and my landlord had texted me twice about September rent. The post was simple: 3 weeks, good pay, just water the plants on schedule, no pets, no parties, easy money. The homeowner's name was Victoria Marsh. She met me at the house on Thursday to hand over the keys. The place sat at the end of a gravel road about 40 minutes outside town, surrounded by pine trees that seemed taller than they should be. Victorian style, pale yellow paint, a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Victoria was older, maybe 70, with silver hair pulled back tight. She walked me through each room with precise steps, her shoes clicking on the hardwood. The furniture was antique but well kept, heavy curtains, oil paintings of forests. Everything smelled faintly of lavender. Then she took me to the plants. They were in the sunroom at the back of the house. 12 of them arranged in a perfect circle on individual pedestals. I'm not good with plant names, but these were unusual. Dark green leaves that were almost black, thick stems, small white flowers that hadn't bloomed yet, just tight buds that looked like closed eyes. Victoria handed me a sheet of paper, a schedule printed in small, precise font. "You must follow this exactly," she said, "not approximately, exactly." I glanced at the paper. Each plant had a number and a watering time. Plant 1 at 3:47 a.m., plant 2 at 6:13 a.m., plant 3 at 9:02 a.m. The times continued through the day and night, irregular intervals that made no sense. "That's really specific," I said. "Yes. Why those exact times?" Victoria looked at me for a long moment. "Because that's when they need it. Set alarms, don't miss one. If you can't commit to the schedule, tell me now and I'll find someone else." I needed the money. I told her I could do it. She handed me the keys and a watering can with measurement marks on the side. 1 cup per plant, no more, no less. If you have questions, don't call me. I'll be somewhere without reception. 3 weeks, you can do this. She left in a black sedan and I stood in the driveway watching dust settle on the gravel. The first night was fine. I set alarms on my phone for every watering time. The 3:47 a.m. alarm jolted me awake and I stumbled downstairs to the sunroom. The house was dark and quiet. I measured 1 cup of water into the can and watered plant 1, watching the liquid disappear into the black soil. The plant didn't move or do anything strange. It just sat there. I went back to bed. The schedule was exhausting. I'd fall asleep and wake up 2 hours later for the next watering. Then again, then again. By day 3, I was a zombie, surviving on coffee and the knowledge that I was getting paid well for this. But I started noticing things. The plants were growing, not slowly the way normal plants grow. Visibly, by day 5, plant 1 had doubled in height. The white buds were larger, straining against their closed petals. The leaves had spread wider, and I could have sworn they turned slightly toward me when I entered the room. I told myself I was tired. Sleep deprivation causes hallucinations. It's a known thing. On day 7, I missed an alarm. I'd been up for 36 hours with only scattered naps between waterings. My phone was on the nightstand. The alarm went off at 1:33 p.m. for plant 7. I heard it in my dream, far away, and I reached for it, but my hand was heavy and I fell back asleep. I woke up 2 hours later in a panic. I ran downstairs to the sunroom. The plant stood in their circle, taller now, almost 4 feet high. Plant 7 was in the back. As I approached with the watering can, I saw that its leaves had turned brown at the edges, curled inward. The white bud at the top had shriveled. I watered it quickly, apologizing out loud like it could hear me. The water hit the soil and the plant shuddered, actually shuddered. The brown edges darkened further and the stem sagged. I backed away. That night I couldn't sleep even though I was exhausted. I lay in the upstairs bedroom staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. At 3:47 a.m. my alarm went off and I went downstairs. Plant 7 was dead, completely brown, collapsed against its pedestal. The other 11 plants had grown another 6 inches. I watered plant 1 and tried not to look at the dead one in the back. When I turned to leave, I heard a sound behind me, a soft rustling like fabric moving. I looked back. The plants were still, but the white buds on some of them had started to open, just barely. Thin slits showing darkness inside. I left the room quickly. The next few days were worse. I didn't miss another alarm, but I was running on pure adrenaline. The plants kept growing. By day 10, they were 6 feet tall, their stems thick as my wrist. The white buds had opened fully. They weren't flowers, they were eyes, not metaphorically, not sort of like eyes, actual eyes, white sclera, dark pupils that moved, that tracked my movement when I entered the room. I called Victoria's number. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message trying to keep my voice steady. I said the plants were unusual and asked if this was normal. She didn't call back. I thought about leaving, just walking out and driving away and telling Victoria to keep her money. But I needed it, and I'd signed something. And maybe I was losing my mind from exhaustion and the plants were just plants and I was seeing things that weren't there. On day 13, plant 7 came back to life. I walked into the sunroom at dawn and the dead plant was green again, healthy, taller than the others. Its eye was open and fixed on the doorway, fixed on me. I watered it according to the schedule because I didn't know what else to do. That afternoon I searched the house. I needed to know what these things were. Victoria's bedroom was locked, but the study wasn't. I found notebooks in her desk, pages and pages of notes in cramped handwriting, observations, growth rates, times. Formulas I didn't understand. One passage was underlined. They maintain the boundary. As long as they're fed on schedule, the threshold remains closed. Miss 2 consecutive feedings and the binding weakens. 3 and it breaks. I dropped the notebook. I'd missed 1 feeding. Plant 7 had died and come back wrong. I couldn't miss another. The plants were 7 feet tall now. The sunroom felt crowded with them, their eyes watching me from all directions. When I watered them, they leaned toward the can, eager. Hungry, I started talking to myself to stay awake. I paced the house between feedings. I drank so much coffee my hands shook. The alarms on my phone were my entire existence. 3:47 a.m., 6:13 a.m., 9:02 a.m. On day 18, I fell asleep standing up. I was in the kitchen waiting for the next alarm. I'd been awake for 40 hours. My eyes closed for what I thought was a second, and I jerked awake on the floor with my phone screaming. The alarm for plant 4. 10:26 p.m. I checked the time. 10:51 p.m. I'd missed it by 25 minutes. I grabbed the watering can and ran. My hands were shaking so badly I spilled water on the floor. I burst into the sunroom and froze. All 11 living plants had turned toward plant 4. Their eyes were open wide. The air smelled wrong, like ozone before a storm. Plant 4's leaves were turning black, not brown like plant 7, black. And the black was spreading down the stem into the soil, across the floor in thin cracks that glowed faintly red. I poured the water over plant 4. The black stopped spreading. The cracks in the floor faded. The plant shuddered and stabilized, but the damage was done. Its eye had changed. The pupil was wrong, oval instead of round. It looked at me with something that felt like recognition. The other plants turned back to their positions. I backed out of the room and locked the door. 5 more days. I just needed to survive 5 more days. I didn't sleep again. I couldn't risk it. I set up camp in the hallway outside the sunroom with my phone and the watering can and a thermos of coffee. Between alarms, I sat against the wall and stared at the door and tried not to think about what threshold the plants were guarding or what would happen if it opened. The plants stopped growing at 8 feet. Their eyes followed me constantly. When I watered them, they leaned in close, and I could feel something like breath on my skin even though they had no mouths. Plant 7 and plant 4 looked different from the others. Their eyes were darker, hungrier. When I watered them, they shook harder than the rest, like they were struggling against something. On day 21, Victoria came back. I heard the car in the driveway at noon. I was in the sunroom watering plant 9. Victoria walked in and stopped in the doorway, looking at the plants, at me. I must have looked terrible. I hadn't showered in days. My hands shook. I probably smelled. "You kept the schedule," she said. "I missed 2, I said. "Plant 7 and plant 4. I was too late. I'm sorry." She nodded slowly. "But you caught them. You didn't miss 3. "What are they?" Victoria walked past me to the circle of plants. She reached out and touched one of the stems almost tenderly. "Guards. There's a crack in the world under this house. Something tried to come through 30 years ago. These keep it sealed. As long as they're fed on schedule, they have the strength to hold it closed. What happens if they're not fed? They die, and when enough of them die, the threshold opens." She looked at me. "You did well. Most people can't last 3 weeks. She paid me in cash. I took it and left and drove back to town with the windows down, trying to get the smell of lavender and ozone out of my nose. I never went back. But sometimes at 3:47 a.m. I wake up and wonder who's watering the plants now. If anyone is, if Victoria found someone else, or if she's doing it herself, or if one day she'll miss just one too many, and something patient and hungry will finally push through that crack in the world and climb up into the house at the end of the gravel road. I hope I'm far away when that happens. But I still set an alarm for 3:47 a.m. just in case I need to remember what I'm running from. Drop your verdict in the comments. Wait, what?